what if the biggest mountain you face isn't out there in the world or the people around you? What if it's actually within you? What if everything you resist, everything you struggle with is something you are unconsciously creating or maybe holding on to?
Yeah.
What if the very peak you're trying to climb is you?
That's a pretty confronting thought, isn't it? This whole exploration is really based on the powerful ideas in the book The Mountain Is You by Brianna Wiest.
Right.
We're going to take a closer look at the subtle, often hidden ways we kind of get in our own way, what the book calls self-sabotage.
Okay.
And more importantly, dive into the insights it offers on how to, well, shift things by understanding and transforming our internal landscape.
Understanding these internal dynamics is such a crucial skill for anyone really aiming to make progress, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. It demands reflection, critical thinking about your own patterns.
Exactly. And that's the kind of introspection we really aim to inspire with tools like Mindful Moments over on our YouTube channel. It offers AI book analysis designed for diving into topics just like this one.
Yeah, perfect for this. So let's talk about self-sabotage. The book's core idea is that it's rarely, the obvious dramatic self-destruction you might picture. It's usually way more subtle. It shows up as these quiet patterns or ingrained habits, maybe coping mechanisms that, well, perhaps they helped you once, but now they're holding you back.
It reminds me of that story about Carl Jung mentioned in the book. He had this minor injury as a kid, and, well, he didn't like school much.
Right.
And he had this fleeting thought, like, maybe this means I don't have to go back. And then, bam,
Yeah.
Shortly after, he starts having these severe, uncontrollable fainting spells.
Wow.
Kept him home. And later, he realized they were purely physical manifestations of his unconscious desire to just avoid school. He called these kinds of things substitutes for legitimate suffering.
A substitute. That's powerful.
Yeah, a way to avoid the real discomfort underneath.
And that's exactly what the book highlights, isn't it? Self-sabotage acting as this maladaptive coping mechanism.
Maladaptive, yeah.
It gives you a temporary feeling, maybe relief from anxiety or avoiding vulnerability, maybe a fleeting sense of control, but it doesn't actually require you to face the deeper problem.
So it's just numbing, really, a shortcut that stops you finding real solutions.
Exactly. And the root often seems to be fear, but interestingly, not always, like rational fear of external things.
Right.
The book points out it's frequently these abstract fears about ourselves. Am I smart enough? Am I attractive? Or conceptual fears like losing control or being found out.
And these fears become almost like, well, comfortable attachments. Which sounds weird, but...
It does, but it makes sense in a way. And what's really insightful is that these abstract fears often act as a shield for a real underlying fear that feels way too scary to even look at directly.
Okay, so like...
Well, worrying endlessly about something super unlikely, like a specific kind of accident, that feels safer subconsciously than confronting a deep fear of, say, not being worthy.
Because you kind of know the accident probably won't happen.
Exactly. It gives you an outlet for the anxiety without having to face that core wound.
So that constant hum of anxiety, that feeling like you're stuck in a loop, it's often fueled by some deep limiting belief.
Yeah, the book gives some great examples. Like maybe you unconsciously think being really healthy makes you vulnerable because you saw someone healthy get sick once.
Or maybe you crave the praise for writing more than actually writing. So you never sit down and do it.
That's a good one. Or eating food you know isn't good for you as a quick, soothing thing, but you haven't asked what you're really trying to soothe deep down.
Or complaining. Using complaining as your main way to connect with people because you haven't learned other ways.
Right. And this brings up a really interesting point the book makes. What if some of this isn't even about deep-seated trauma? What if sometimes self-sabotage is just unfamiliarity?
Unfamiliarity. How so?
Like, we confuse the simple discomfort of stepping into something new, being happier, more successful, healthier. We confuse that discomfort with something being fundamentally wrong or bad.
So it's not a flaw. It's just adjusting,
Yeah.
Psychologically adjusting to a new normal.
Exactly. It's just adjustment, which ties perfectly into Gay Hendricks' idea of the upper limit, which the book talks about.
Yes, the upper limit, like an internal thermostat for how much good stuff you allow yourself. Happiness, success.
Precisely. Our brains, they're fundamentally wired for comfort, for predictability. Not necessarily for maximum joy, surprisingly.
Right. We have this baseline we're used to.
And when we start to go above it, things are going really well, maybe too well, we unconsciously sort of sabotage things to bring ourselves back down.
Back to what feels familiar. Even if familiar is like low-grade unhappiness or anxiety.
Yeah. Because familiar feels safe, even if it's not actually good for us.
You can make those tiny shifts, right?
Yeah.
Consistently.
Yeah.
And slowly raise that baseline over time.
You can. But the resistance kicks in when you hit that current upper limit. Your system just wants to revert. It's programmed to seek what it knows.
It's like the brain's homeostatic impulse, isn't it? The thing that regulates body temperature and stuff.
Exactly the same principle. It seeks to maintain a steady state, psychologically too. It reinforces those familiar pathways, making the old patterns feel like home base, even if they're keeping you stuck.
Okay, so let's dig into some of the common ways this actually shows up. The book lists several patterns that aren't just, bad habits. They're signals.
Signals of those deeper fears or beliefs we were talking about. One huge one is denial.
Right, not just ignoring something, but actively choosing not to know.
Like not looking at your bank account when you know it's bad. Or avoiding that necessary argument, pretending everything's fine.
And the book is blunt. You cannot heal what you refuse to look at. Denial just stops growth dead in its tracks.
Totally. And then there's justification.
The constant rationalizing. I can't because...
Exactly. Rationalizing unhappiness or why you didn't do something. And the book makes a key point. Life measures outcomes, not your good intentions.
Ouch. Doesn't matter how many times you meant to go to the gym.
Right. It matters if you went. Justification keeps you stuck in the story of why not, instead of looking at what you have done or can do, maybe even quantifying the small wins.
Another big one it mentions is attachment to what you don't really want.
Oh, this is huge. Fighting for years for goals you think you should want, maybe from family, society, or just old dreams you've outgrown.
Like, are you chasing the idea of that job title? Or do you actually enjoy the day-to-day work? The idea of a relationship versus the reality of being with that specific person.
Exactly. The book pushes you to ask, do I actually want this? Or am I just attached to the idea of it? Getting radically honest.
That is a tough question.
Yeah.
And often linked to that, I think, is needing external validation.
Definitely. Caring more about how you look to others than how you actually feel.
It's not about real connection then. It's about prioritizing being liked over being, happy or fulfilled.
And we fall prey to the spotlight effect, right? Thinking everyone's watching and judging us way more than they actually are.
Yeah, we really overestimate that.
The book puts it so well. This battle is ultimately you versus you. It's not you versus what other people think.
Think about the energy that takes. Living for potential approval. And speaking of energy drains, being busy.
The busy trap. Using constant activity like as a shield. A distraction from what's really going on inside or what you need to face.
Yeah, it might signal poor priorities, sure, but often it's just avoidance.
It feels important, being busy. It communicates status almost. But it can just be overwhelming your system to avoid confronting yourself or taking truly meaningful action.
It's amazing how deep these patterns run. The book gets into this idea that they often come from subconscious core commitments. It mentions Teal Swan's work here.
Yeah, these primary goals you might not even know you have, but they're driving your behavior.
And they explain stuff that seems totally irrational otherwise.
Exactly. Like a core commitment to always feel free might lead you to sabotage perfectly good job opportunities because they feel like traps.
Or a commitment to feeling wanted might push you into relationships that actually lack real commitment, ironically.
Right. Or a commitment to always be in control could show up as intense anxiety about anything you can't control.
Or maybe a commitment to being loved by others causes you to unconsciously act kind of helpless so people take care of you.
But here's the really key insight the book offers on this. These core commitments. They're almost always covering up deep, unmet core needs.
Okay.
And the commitment is usually the opposite of the need. So that commitment to control, it's masking a core need for trust. The commitment to feeling needed, covering a core need to know you are genuinely wanted for who you are, not what you do.
And the commitment to being loved by others.
Often hiding a core need for self-love, for validating yourself.
Oh, yeah. So the less you consciously meet those real needs,
the louder the self-sabotage gets. It's your unconscious screaming for attention, basically. Aligning your actions with those true underlying needs, that's the path to dismantling these patterns. It starts with figuring out what you really need beneath all the noise.
Okay, so that's the why. How do we actually move from just understanding this stuff to actually changing it? Because the book is clear, right? It takes action.
Absolutely. Knowing isn't enough. You have to adjust your behavior. A big part of this is facing repressed emotions.
Like anger, sadness, feeling inadequate. stuff we usually push away.
Yeah. The book suggests really making space for them, like noticing where you feel them physically in your body, just observing without judgment.
Giving them room to just be.
Exactly. And finding ways to release them, even simple things like writing, maybe a letter to your younger self, or writing out a personal manifesto or mantra.
Just getting it out.
Getting it out helps externalize it, stops it controlling you from the inside. When you actually feel it consciously, it loses some of its power over you.
Okay, this leads to what you mentioned earlier, maybe the toughest part. Disconnecting action and feeling.
Yes. This is crucial. We usually think we need to feel motivated or inspired or, brave before we can act.
But the book says that's backwards.
Completely backwards. Feelings are often just comfort systems designed to keep you right where you are in the familiar zone.
So you don't change because you don't feel like it, not because you actually can't.
Precisely. The book really hammers this. You have to take action before you feel ready, before you feel motivated.
Action creates the momentum.
Action creates momentum. Action generates the motivation. Your logic, your vision for where you want to go, that needs to be the driver, not your temporary, often in fear-based feelings. You have to be willing to act even when every part of you feels resistant.
That takes practice. Understanding the purpose of difficult emotions helps too, right?
Yeah.
The book breaks them down. Like guilt.
Yeah, it suggests guilt often isn't really about what you just did. It's more like an echo from childhood, kind of projected onto now.
Okay. And resentment.
Often comes from having unrealistic expectations of other people. The way forward isn't demanding they change, but maybe changing your internal story about them, focusing on what you learned about them, or about how to love yourself better in that situation.
Learning the lesson. What about regret?
Regret isn't just about beating yourself up. It's a powerful signal. It shows you what's truly important for you to change going forward or what you deeply value.
So regret about not traveling means prioritize travel now.
Exactly. Regret about not appreciating someone. It's a prompt to appreciate people today.
And chronic fear, that constant worrying.
The book frames that often as like an underdeveloped response system, maybe from trauma, or just a projected metaphor, usually for a fear of losing control.
Okay.
But here's the twist. The way fear controls you isn't just the scary thoughts themselves. It's the fact that you hold on to those thoughts, you dwell on them. So the solution isn't necessarily avoiding the fear, but acceptance. Practicing a kind of surrender. Okay, if that happens, it happens. Paradoxically, that gives you your power back from the fear itself.
Which links to telling the difference between real intuition and fear. That's tricky.
It is. But the book offers clues. Instinct, true intuition, is about the present moment. It uses subconscious info available now. It feels calm, centered, grounded.
Okay. Whereas fear.
Fear is almost always about a projected future that doesn't even exist yet. It feels panicked, urgent, invasive. Intuitive thoughts tend to be rational, open up possibilities. Fear thoughts are often irrational and shut things down.
So peace, not panic, is the signpost.
Generally, yes. Peace is the feeling pointing you towards your truth.
The book also kind of pushes back on waiting for that one big breakthrough moment, right? Like a lightning strike of change.
Absolutely. It argues breakthroughs aren't random. They're usually just the visible tipping point after loads of consistent, maybe even boring work over time.
Which leads to the idea of microshifts.
Yes. Tiny, tiny incremental changes, but done consistently. Think about the penny doubling every day for a month.
Right. Starts small, but ends up huge.
Exactly. Compounding. Small actions repeated over time lead to massive outcomes, way more powerful than waiting for inspiration to strike for one giant leap.
And these outcomes, the book says, they're governed by principles, not just fleeting passion or how you feel.
Yeah, a principle is like a fundamental truth about cause and effect. Things like living below your means, consistently showing up for your health, being reliable in relationships or work.
These work whether you feel like it or not.
Exactly. They dictate results. Building your life on principles gives you a stability that momentary feelings just can't shake.
And finding your purpose. The book suggests it's less mystical, more practical.
Yeah, basically finding the sweet spot where what you're good at, what genuinely interests you, and what the world actually needs or values, where those three overlap.
Figuring out how you can best contribute.
Right. And it offers some useful questions to nudge you. What would you do if social media vanished tomorrow? What stuff comes so naturally to you, you barely think about it? If you designed your ideal productive day, what would it look like?
Those point you towards your natural flow, your authentic path.
Exactly. And to really step into that, the book suggests connecting with your highest potential future self.
Okay, sounds a bit out there.
It might sound it, but it's actually a recognized therapeutic tool. It's not just fantasy, it's a visualization technique to get really clear on the person you're aiming to become.
So how does it work?
You find a quiet spot, kind of invite your future self, maybe picture them at a certain age, or just let an image come and you just observe. How do they look? How do they carry themselves? How do they feel? What kind of actions are they taking?
And the point is?
To merge with that version, in a way. To use how they look, feel, and act as a guide for your choices right now. Ask yourself, what would the most powerful, aligned version of me do in this situation today?
That's a powerful reframe. Requires courage, though.
Definitely. Including the willingness to be disliked. The book points out people living their full potential, they aren't necessarily universally popular.
Right. They prioritize their convictions over getting everyone's approval.
Yeah, you have to anticipate some resistance, some pushback, and choose to act from your principles anyway.
It's about shifting from just living for the moment, reacting, to living for the legacy you want to build, having real conviction in your vision.
Absolutely. And none of this happens without the inner work, that essential, often uncomfortable foundation.
What does that look like, according to the book?
Simplifying your life, talking less, letting your actions and accomplishments speak more, making physical health non-negotiable, assuming everyone you meet has something valuable to teach you, embracing vulnerability, and really consciously designing your daily routine to support the person you're becoming.
Okay, let's talk about healing. The book reframes it, interestingly, not just getting back to how you were before you got hurt.
Right, it calls it positive disintegration, which sounds intense, but it means breaking down old, rigid ways of being so you can adapt and actually thrive in new, more complex situations.
So you become more resilient, more conscious, more capable.
More empathetic, too. Not less affected, but better equipped to handle things. Healing involves actively releasing those old, unfinished emotional experiences.
And the book mentions they can get stored physically.
Yeah, so working through stuff isn't just in your head. It can involve physical release, like deep breathing to let go of tension you didn't even know you were holding.
It also mentions a psychological technique, like imagining your healed future self talking to your younger self.
Yeah, or just reframing a tough experience through the lens of what you learned, who it helped you become. It recontextualizes the trauma, helps you shift from being stuck in it to moving forward from it.
Because ruminating, dwelling on it, doesn't mean you want to go back.
It just means you're stuck. The book suggests you start letting go, not by waiting until you've fully processed everything, but by taking even one small step towards a new life, even while the pain might still be there.
Which leads to maybe the most crucial point for actual healing. Showing up exactly as you are right now.
Yes. This is huge. True healing isn't about fixing every single flaw until you're finally acceptable. It's about accepting yourself fully, right now, flaws and all.
That completely disrupts the self-sabotage pattern of needing external approval or achieving perfection before you let yourself feel worthy or happy.
Exactly. Nature needs imperfection to grow, right? Fault lines make mountains. Supernovas create new elements. You're not meant to be perfect and static. That would kill all the spontaneity, the awe.
The book also gives a simple test for figuring out what's genuinely right for you. Job, relationship, place.
Yeah. What's truly right tends to bring clarity. It doesn't require constant forcing or self-convincing, and ultimately, it sticks around.
Whereas what isn't right
brings confusion, constant internal debate. It takes a ton of effort just to hold on to it.
That's a useful filter. It also touches on how trauma impacts the brain physically.
Right. Disrupting memory, shrinking emotional range, feeling stuck, hypersensitivity. The key insight there is that restoring safety has to happen in the relevant area.
So if you have relationship trauma, you need to build safe relationships. Financial trauma, create financial security.
Exactly. Don't try to fix trust issues from a bad relationship by, say, becoming obsessive about controlling your food intake. It doesn't work. Address the specific area where the safety was compromised.
Makes sense. And remembering emotions are physical. They need release.
And mental strength isn't about not feeling. It's the ability to have a thought or feel an emotion without automatically being controlled by it or having to react immediately, creating that space between stimulus and response.
Ultimately, then, it's about consciously choosing to enjoy life more.
Yeah. Being present. Managing expectations, especially of others. Connecting genuinely, not trying to impress or dominate, but building real quality connections. The book echoes the research. Relationship quality, not just quantity, is key for well-being, for staving off loneliness.
And being mindful of where your attention goes.
Because your thoughts game life where you focus your energy.
So looking back, the mountains we face, they aren't just roadblocks.
The book suggests seeing them as gifts, really. Opportunities that forced you to dig deep, to grow, to transform, to become more fully yourself.
It really does all circle back to that self-awareness, taking radical responsibility for your inner world, and then taking that aligned action, those consistent micro-shifts.
Yeah, based on principles and your deeper purpose, not just the whim of the moment. Healing isn't about erasing the past. It's about actively climbing forward into a stronger, more conscious, more capable you.
And if these ideas are hitting home for you, you can definitely explore them more on Mindful Moments on our YouTube channel and check out our other shows on our podcasts.
Great resources for continuing this kind of reflection.
We really hope this exploration of the mountain is you has sparked some important thoughts for you. If it did connect, please subscribe so you don't miss what's next.
And maybe share this with someone you think might find these ideas helpful right now.
You can find links in the show notes to check out the book itself, too.
But most importantly, take these concepts and apply some critical thinking to your own life. Really observe your own patterns. Ask yourself those tough questions the book brings up.
So, the final thought. If the biggest mountain really is you, what's the very first step, maybe even a micro shift, you'll choose to take today to begin that climb from within?